Welcome, everyone, to Insights with the Experts. We have a very special guest with us this week, Erik Swain, a longtime digital advertising executive and now running his own business, Respondology, which is really interesting. Erik, welcome to Insights with the Experts.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Appreciate it.
Good to have you today. Yeah, no, you have a really interesting story for a number of reasons. Obviously, we've known each other many years, and we can get into some of that if need be, but I think two areas in particular would be really interesting for our audience, which, as you know, is primarily student athletes. So the first, certainly they're very familiar with social media, spend a lot of time on social media when they can. And I think Respondology's mission would be really interesting for them and resonate, given how much they're familiar with and have grown up on social media. And then personally, your story, you're starting as an advertising executive, many years in that space, and then transitioning into running your own business at Respondology. That's not only interesting for our student athletes, but interesting for me. So why don't we start there? Tell us about Respondology, the mission, and what you and your team are doing to help brands avoid toxic environments online.
Sure. I'll start with the mission. I'm gonna take us back to how we got started and why on that, and how I made the change. So the company's mission is to eradicate online abuse and hate and all the invasive spam and bots. And we're well on our way to doing that. We've been doing it for 5 years now. We have 450 brands around the world. Those brands can be athletes, who you are a brand as an athlete. Those brands could be the Nikes of the world, the GoPros, clients of ours, to NFL teams. And what we do is, in less than a second, discreetly, we remove all the very ugly, toxic abuse and the invasive bots from their social streams. And it's important to call out, it's not really negativity, it's the useless, toxic sort of vitriol that invades social media. And everybody here listening, watching this certainly has experienced that. It's a good mission, it's a company that's out to make some money. There's a commercial aspect to it. I have investors that want a return on their investment, but we do it because we believe in it. Our internal motto is #technology for good, using technology for a good cause in this world, which is when businesses really sing, in my opinion. So as you alluded to, 25, 26 years of putting ads on the internet in various ways, whether it was video ads or ads using offline data for online targeting. You and I did some of this work together for sure, building up the video ad business in this world. It all changed actually 5 years ago with Serena Williams, interesting enough. So I had a product friend, and we were working on a different ad product, and he sauntered over to my desk one day and he said, "Hey, you got to see this." And it was Serena Williams posting out on Facebook in the 2019 US Open. And she was posting out a photo of her and her baby in her hotel room waiting for her match. And we started looking at it, and the horrible comments were as ugly as they get. The N-word, attacking her baby, attacking her in all kinds of ways. And first off, we had an emotional response. We thought, how can this be? This should not be allowed. We had it, we almost saw it as an emotional imperative that, hey, this has to be solved. And then the business imperative started to creep up as we started following Serena and looking at other athletes' posts. And we thought, well, wait a sec, Facebook's not solving this? And if Facebook's not solving this, and we go over to our Instagram account, and it would be the same, and the Twitter account, it would be the same. So the social platforms aren't solving this, and there's no other company solving this. And then we thought, geez, I wonder if they have an API, a technical connection that allows companies like us to solve it. And suddenly the business imperative kicked in. We thought, wow, we could go do some good in this world, but there's a big problem out there, clearly not getting solved. Maybe we could go solve it. And when you're a company solving a big problem, that's usually when companies do well. So that's how I personally got into it, and how the business got into it, and what we do. Serena Williams.
So given the, yeah, no, and it's interesting, right? The timing, right on the heels here of the US Open, and she was a big figure, obviously retired, but she's all over the place, tennis world. So
Yeah.
yeah, great story about the origin. So given, Erik, the magnitude of that challenge, of the problem you guys are trying to solve, go back 5 years and up to present day, what have been some of your biggest challenges as a startup entrepreneur in executing on that very big mission?
People and money. So, pretty quickly, three of us, my two co-founders and myself, realized that there was a business to be built here. So we had the vision, right? We could get in a room and we could whiteboard it. But to actually pursue that vision, at some point you need people to help you do it, and you need the money to hire those people to do it. And so the biggest challenge I've always found in this is my fourth startup. This is the first time I'm leading one, but being a part of one, is you can get in the room and see what you want to do, but execution is a different story. There's vision and there's execution. And there's a great quote out there, I forget who said it, that vision without execution is like a hallucination. And so I always found that to be the hardest part, is you might have the vision, you could build a PowerPoint deck or a Google Slides deck that says, this is what I want to do, but you need people to go do it. And so the approach there has to be just one step at a time. So there was three of us, and we hired a junior person. And what we did is we just built an MVP, a minimal viable product, just a very basic product that would remove abusive comments from social media. And then we had to go out and get some people to use it, because if we got some people to use it and they liked it, then we could go to investors and say, hey, there's demand for this. Will you give us money to go hire the people to really get after this and execute? But you have to start small. And so we built, I think with less than $5,000, a minimal viable product. And we brought it to the Detroit Pistons because we knew the security guard of the building, literally, who got us to a marketer, who allowed us to show it and say, hey, we've seen a lot of hate on your social stream on your athletes. We got a little thing here that can solve it. Can we show it to you? And we did. And Detroit Pistons said, that's pretty good. We'll use that. Okay, $1,000 a month, use it. They came back to us for 1 month and said, we want to do it another month. Okay, maybe we're onto something here. We've now had the Detroit Pistons for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And then it just started to snowball. And after I got 4 or 5 clients like that, just through people I knew, it was relationships and networking, I went and found an investor and said, hey, I think I've got something here. GoPro keeps coming back and wanting to use it. Detroit Pistons keep coming back and trying to use it. I got to the Denver Broncos through a golfing friend that knew the owner. They want to keep coming back and using it. I think I have something sticky here. And the key is I had a drug, not a vitamin. Right? Vitamins are nice to have. A drug you have to have. And if you have a drug, well, you're onto something. And so I went to my investors, or I found a couple investors and said, hey, I think I have a drug. Why don't you talk to Denver Broncos, Detroit Pistons, and GoPro, see what they have to say. And if you like what they have to say, let's talk about investing in the company in a very small way. And this started to get the ball rolling from vision to execution, because then I was able to raise a few $1 million, start to go hire some people to really get after it. Some salespeople, I'll tell you about it. And now I was out of the whiteboard and I was actually growing a business at a very small scale, but it had some momentum. And so that's the hardest part. You may have an idea out there, but you've got to get a couple people using it to really take it anywhere. That's a gauntlet to cross in any founder's journey. But once you do that, now you're rolling. And you'll have lots of other things and problems to come up, but that's the starting gun point. That's how you get out of the gates.
I think that is such a great and relevant story, Erik. I mean, oftentimes, and we know this, right? Being around entrepreneurs, I guess ourselves, in many cases, particularly earlier in your careers, you build something and then you try to sell it, rather than you build the absolute minimal viable product, $5,000, whatever the investment might be, to kind of get you off the ground, and then you go market it and make sure there is a market for the product before you invest in building it, right? And then executing it and raising capital and hiring people to run the business. So that's such an important lesson for young entrepreneurs as they're just starting out, right? Let me put this together, because I think someone will buy it, spend a lot of time, which is the most valuable resource, and money in some cases, whether it's their own or someone else's. And that's where the challenge really comes in, having to execute. So you executed first, essentially, right? Obviously not easy. So congrats. That's a nice story. I commend you.
Yeah, I mean, for everybody that's going to see this, just there's an acronym you're going to have to remember: PMF, product market fit. And if you ever get around any investors, you're going to hear that acronym, and that's the first thing they're going to ask you. Or a friend who's going to give you some money who thinks about it correctly, whatever it might be, they're going to say, well, is the product in demand? Do you have any examples of that? Like, it sounds great, but you never know until you go sell it to a few people. Product market fit, it's your starting point. You got to find it.
So you have a fit locally with the Colorado Buffaloes. Let's talk about that if we can briefly. Your partnership with them, how it evolved.
Yeah, it evolved again through somebody I knew Coach Boyle, Tad Boyle, who's the coach of the CU basketball team, the Buffalo basketball team. And he had heard about it and said, yeah, I got students that have gotten so much abuse. One missed a free throw in their run for the tournament, not this year, but the year before, and actually left the program because of the abuse he received. So he had an emotional response to the idea there was a local company in Boulder that could stop that, which got us a meeting through a friend of a friend. So here I am in Coach Boyle's office, and I show him the technology, and I just looked him in the eyes and said, look, any abuse that your student athletes are getting and or the Colorado Buffaloes, we're going to remove it in less than a second. He said, okay, why don't you come in and talk to the team about it? So 2 weeks later, there I am in the Colorado Buffs basketball film room, literally in their film room. They come out of practice and they sit down, and I explained to the team and I showed them, the athletes, what it did. And that was the beginning. And there's actually a little story there of why they found it important, what motivated them. We can come back to it, but we ended up getting the Colorado basketball team on our platform for their run through the tournament last year. That went well. So I went back this summer and met with the associate AD and said, hey, what about Dion's football team? And she said, yeah, I heard the basketball team liked it a lot. And so we put the football team on it, who definitely needs it after the Nebraska game this past Saturday. And now we have the football program on it. And now we're talking about a deal where we protect all sports and all athletes in Colorado University,
Great.
University of Colorado. And it's for a couple of reasons. Mental health is one, right? There is technology. You don't have to read this abuse. And again, we're not talking about negativity. We're talking about outright hatred, right? You wouldn't allow somebody to come into your locker room or into the stadium and shout profanity and racism and hatred. So why would you allow it in your digital channels? That's all we're talking about here. The Colorado Buffaloes see it as a recruiting tool. Come to the Buffs, where we take care of your kids, parents, right? We protect them on the court, off the court, and their social channels. And then here's where it gets real interesting: NIL. Right? Sponsorships. Sponsors want a family-friendly environment. So I'm in the film room. I show the product. I demo it live to the team, the actual basketball players, and I say, "Look, all this abuse is going to go away. Who's interested?" They weren't sure. I said, "Okay, this is going to make every single one of you more sponsorable for NIL." Everybody's hand went up. They went to the back room and they signed up immediately, because sponsors don't want to be associated with racism, with homophobia, with personal attacks. They want a more friendly environment. And so this is really important for mental health. This is really important for the sponsorable nature of an athlete. This is just a good thing. I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if we focus in on collegiate athletics for a moment, as NIL just continues to mushroom into this enormous opportunity for student athletes who are still in high school, right?
Yeah.
I think this notion that student athletes are themselves media companies will make a market for Respondology that, while big now, while meaningful now, as you explained it, could be massive. Talk about the future of social media, what it means to these independent media companies known as student athletes.
I mean, social media is a two-way communication street. That's the keystone of it, right? It's not one way. A television ad is one way. This is two-way, which means it comes back to you. And you are a brand as an athlete. Ronaldo's on our platform, the soccer player. He has 600 million followers. It's amazing. But so are the athletes right now for the CU Buffs. And they're on our platform and they are a brand. And you're a brand in a marketable, sponsorable world. So I'll tell you, I'll make it real. IC Health is a sponsor of the CU Buffs, and they're actually a client of ours. And we went to talk to him before the meeting of the Buffs and said, would you be happy if all the athletes you sponsored and the programs you were involved with no longer had racism or homophobia or vitriol attacks, or I want to kill the coach or all this ugliness? And they said, actually, yeah, we would actually be very happy with that. That would make us feel a lot better. So there is a perspective for the athletes from the companies that will give you money to be associated with you, your brand, your likeness, your image and likeness. And these people spend a lot of money on you, and they have metrics. They have to report internally about engagement. They have to show that it was a positive environment. So they have bosses that they need to go to and say, hey, I've given money to be associated with this person's brand, and here's what I'm doing to maximize that opportunity, make sure it's good use of my company's money. So this is their mindset. And I think it's all going to change over the next 2 or 3 years as NIL really kicks into high gear with the new legal outings happening. This is going to become a multi-billion-dollar business, and where there's billions of dollars, there's tools and technology to make sure that opportunity is maximized and optimized for the payer of those billions of dollars. So if you don't think this is standard now and you're an athlete out there, it's going to become standard. You are going to be a brand. And as a brand, you have certain responsibilities to the people that give you money to associate with you. And this is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, what you guys are doing is it's purpose driven, and I commend you. You saw it kind of coming around the corner, and now with NIL and everything you guys are doing, timing seems to be really opportunistic for you. So congrats. One last thing. If you had one piece of advice you can impart on let's focus on student athletes who are thinking about their futures and potentially, right, starting their own business one day, what would that be?
I would first go work in another company very quickly. A big company, or preferably even a smaller company. Get some basic skills, see how it's done, just touch finance, marketing, product management, just get a little exposure there first and foremost. But I would not hang there. If you have any instinct or inspiration that you want to start your own thing, do not go get lost in some big company for 5 or 10 years. I think, look, personal choice, but I find smaller companies and or starting your own thing is where your learning curve is going to go through the roof. Your passion is going to be higher than working in a mortgage bank or something like that, unless you're really excited about that line of work. But go work for another company first, because you're going to need to learn some basic skills that will help you start your own thing. Just do a year, maybe a year and a half, more than an internship, I'd say. Because I know a lot of people that go out and try and start their own thing right out of college, and hey, you can make it. I mean, Zuckerberg is the greatest example of all time, halfway through college. But if you go spend 12 to 15 months in a small company somewhere and get exposed to the various elements of how a company operates and how people operate within a company, you're going to be armed much better. Then go out and pursue your dream. And then from there, going back to our earlier conversation, start with something that has that PMF and product market fit. Because if you don't have that, you could work your tail off. You could maybe get some money to support it. You might hire good people, but you're going to have that product market fit. So for me, it's get some basic experience, chops first, go work for somebody else, then pursue your vision and start with that product market fit out of the gate. Those are the two sort of anchors, if you will. If I were to do everything again, I would do it that way. And I know that now, but that's after making some mistakes and going down some wrong roads for sure. So,
yeah, a lot of scars to show for it, but all the better in the end. Great stuff, Erik. Really appreciate the time. This has been rewarding, I'm sure, for our audience, certainly for me. And as always, great to catch up with you. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. Hey, as Wayne, we'll go out on an outro. As Wayne Gretzky said, for those who still remember him, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So go get a little experience, then go take your shot.